Good morning again. So agriculture is back in action. We're gonna talk with some more, as we did yesterday with the Working Lands Enterprise Fund. We're gonna talk to some of the recipients for the Working Lands grants. We always like that. We like to hear the happy stories of that. With the pressure that are on those grants that we have, we always feel bad about the ones that didn't make the cut, but it's always great to know that the people that did have success stories to tell us. So, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us back. Elizabeth Sipple, Working Land Enterprise Initiative Program Manager. Yeah, I think today is like the exciting day. Yesterday, it was the groundwork. It's really important to have the data to understand the program. But I think hearing from the grantees is definitely the best way to capture the impact of the program and why we exist. So as I mentioned yesterday, we were able to award 65, offer 65 grantees awards in fiscal year 2024. And that was through 6 diverse funding opportunities. And again, the awards range from $6,000 to $250,000. So we had the difficult task, of choosing a few that we thought were representative of some of the key like needles that we're trying to move. So today you will be hearing directly from Annie Myers, owner of Myers Produce, based in Craftsbury, Vermont. Myers Produce received a $90,000 supply chain infrastructure grant. And we think it's an excellent example of an investment in the agricultural supply chain, an example of a business that is providing critical distribution services to a whole bunch of Working Lands businesses. And then you will be hearing from Rose Thackeray, co-owner of Union Brook Farm, based in Northfield, Vermont. They received a $9,168 small farm diversification and transition grant. They are a great example of a farm that is diversifying their product offerings to expand into new markets. They are also an exciting example of how policy and funding can work hand in hand, because once Act 93 was enacted last year, the poultry parting law, the board was very excited to launch a few businesses into that new market opportunity. Union Brook Farm is an example of that. Hillside Farm in Albany is another example of an investment that was made last year, right after the passing of Act 93. And then lastly, Mark Goodridge will be joining us virtually.
Yep.
Mark Goodridge from Goodridge Lumber, based in Albany, Vermont, received a $225,000 supply chain infrastructure grant. And they are an excellent example of an investment in on the forestry supply chain side that is playing a critical link between loggers and builders here in Vermont. So I think without further ado, I am
Woman-owned company.
Yes.
Yeah.
Colleen Goodridge.
Goodrich.
A force, total force. And, with all 4 sons engaged in the business. I was actually like, when I was writing the agenda, I was like, not co-owner, like partial owner, it's like, it's a whole big family.
She's I go by them every day. In fact, I know quite a bit about the project that they're going to talk about today. I was involved in the earlier part of it. But anyways, we'll let it all play out.
And Mark will be the one joining us virtually today.
Yeah.
So I think the order is flexible, but if it works for you,
You're driving the ship.
All right, then I think we're gonna begin with Annie.
Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey.
I'm Annie Myers. I'm the owner of Meyer Produce.
Whereabouts are you in Craftsburg?
I'm actually in Albany,
Albany.
Yeah.
Whereabouts?
on Sawmill Road, like down near Neil Leary and
Oh, yeah. Okay, I know where you're at. Yeah,
Yep.
I do. Yeah,
Cool.
good.
So I thought I'd start with just a little bit of the history of Meyer Produce and our mission, sort of exactly what we do, and then move into what we currently do, kind of where we've grown into, and what the funds will hopefully do for our operation.
Mhm.
In 2013, I was working at Peaks Greens as a harvest manager. I was there for 3 years. It's actually the reason I moved to Vermont, was to work there. And at the time, it felt really clear that a vegetable farm, particularly in the Northeast Kingdom, didn't have a lot of options for selling out of state. We were able to deliver, sell to the places we could deliver to. And there were a couple distributors that weren't entirely focused on local. And that was a real challenge to growth, for the farm. And so in that fall 2013, I started driving a van basically from Peaks Greens down to New York City. I had my previous life had been working in New York for restaurants. And I just felt like I still knew people there that I knew would be interested in buying this food. So started off with just Peaks Greens, me and a van. I was making weekly deliveries to about 5 customers. And grew from there. And I think from that very beginning, and still our mission, my goal was to keep land in agriculture in the Northeast, really, but particularly in Vermont, by increasing access to these urban markets in the region. Just make it easier to sell to the cities where there were more people. So, and we, with that mission, we continue to work exclusively with growers and producers within the Northeast. And our whole system of distribution is really designed to highlight the seasonality and the quality, and the variety of the food grown here, which I think is really unusual in our industry. So we are designed around that. As far as what we do exactly, we offer distribution as one service. So we're buying food and selling it to customers at a markup. Most of those customers are retail stores, like independent retail stores. They're all businesses. Most of those customers are based in now New York City, Boston, the Cape, and the Hudson Valley. So those are the main areas we serve, but we sell throughout the area we cover, which in addition to that is Vermont, all of Massachusetts, parts of Connecticut, Rhode Island. We also offer refrigerated transportation. So a farm or any entity really that we work with can ship a pallet of carrots to a given location and just pay us a shipping fee rather than having us buy and sell. So, we, in addition to kind of owning a lot of sales relationships, we also facilitate direct relationships between a farm and customers in the cities. We also now offer cold storage and cross-docking out of our facility. So we are, if a farm, Sparrow Arc Farm recently delivered potatoes that can sit in our facility for someone else to pick up. But that's a really valuable service in the sort of supply chain, trying to get stuff from point A to point B. So I've made myself a little list of current stats where we are now. In 2024, we sold just under $5 million worth of food from the Northeast. We have our fleet is about five box trucks and 3 vans. We're a staff of about 20. We have a 10,000 square foot warehouse space. We currently work with over 175 regional farmers and producers, and about 75 of those are in Vermont. And more than 55% of the food that we sell is grown or produced in Vermont. We started off with a focus on produce and still continue in that. We now carry fresh fruit and grains and dairy products, meat, eggs, grocery, added value stuff, but over 50% of what we sell is vegetables. So, as far as this project, we have been a really healthy growing business, I would say, for the last almost 12 years. But we really, in the past couple years, we're feeling like this hurdle of we're facing a hurdle that we were going to have a hard time getting over, which was a digital infrastructure. We have been operating with Google Sheets and QuickBooks Online and Gmail, essentially. And we're a really complex business, and that really wasn't cutting it. It felt like the cost of, the more research we did, the cost of the software solution we would need was just more than we were going to be able to afford without external funds. And so, and we were like recognizing we're scheduling over 25 truck routes every week. We make over 5,000 deliveries annually. We're selling more than 2,000 products. And like all of it's a lot of activity. And most of our processes were sort of involved manual data entry, just like a human moving numbers from one sheet to another, copying and pasting. So we really were reaching our limit, even while it feels like we had Vermont growers and farmers, like people are always reaching out to us. More farmers want to work with us, and we were feeling like we wouldn't be able to continue to grow without a real, a more efficient system that could really scale. So we had explored solutions for years. We talked to various food hubs that were also facing this challenge and had kind of approached it sooner and came to the conclusion that we needed a custom solution. And so the funds from Working Lands have allowed us to start this project of building a software that will kind of run our company. It's sort of internal operations. Either it's a combination of inventory management, ERP, customer relationships, just like tracking all of what we do, routing. And that is already helping us to have the capacity to expand the number of growers that we serve, like to whom we can offer our services. It also enables us to do things like have pricing tiers, so we can sell the food that we grow or the food that we sell within Vermont cheaper than what we're selling it for in New York City, which we haven't administratively been able to do. And it also increases the sort of reliability and affordability of our services, where like our shipping rates, depend on the efficiency of our system. And so the less costly our system is, the more affordable we can make those services for the growers we work with. So, again, our mission is really to kind of enable farms to stay in business and grow in their business and keep land in farming by offering this access to urban markets. And we feel that this funding is just enabling us to really expand in that work. So I'm really grateful for it. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you. Sure. So the 90,000 was spent to make a homegrown system, or did you I'll take the business side and scrap there. There's got same issue of so many different products. Got to get them all from so many different people.
Yeah.
Keeping track of them is very important thing too. We ended up using a firm that. So are you doing something like that with it, or are you doing something totally in-house?
Yeah, it's a combination. So we're starting with software called Airtable that is you can pay a monthly fee and use the software, but then working with a developer team that is building out portions of, building things onto that essentially, which feels like the most affordable way to do it. If we built something from scratch, that's that much more expensive. But this is sort of a way to combine.
So we continue to have a monthly fee, because I use the company, I have a monthly fee throughout. Will you have, or once you got it up and running, it's in-house and you don't have to pay it?
Well, we will have a monthly fee, and we'll also probably have like a retainer for support for whatever is built. But we feel like that is another thing where that's an expense that we need to grow into, and we feel like the one-time investment in the building of the thing enables us to scale to the point where we can cover that cost.
It took us years to do the same things.
Yeah.
Who are you, how many vendors would you say that you had as far as what you were, in your system?
About 175.
Yeah. Are you partnering with any of the local, the Hardwick, the Yellow Barn, or Peach Greens even? I mean, direct competitor. I mean, are you guys working?
Well, Pete's is one of our major vendors.
Okay.
So like
Okay.
essentially a farm, any farm in Vermont, sells to us, and then we are generally selling out of the area that they would locally sell to. I don't think any of those farms really consider us a competition so much as just a customer.
Right.
We actually rent space from the Yellow Barn, from Farm Connect in their current space, and we're excited to move into the new space in a couple of weeks.
And how long have you been in business?
Since 2013.
2013. How'd you guys scale so fast?
So you think it's bad? I don't know. I mean,
I mean, where did you, because you develop markets,
yeah,
you're moving product, you're moving a lot of product.
yeah.
Was there, it just didn't happen. I mean, you guys, connections, contacts, co-ops,
It
just,
really has been word of mouth. It's not, and I think there is demand for, there's demand for what we're selling, and particularly in, in New York City and Boston, we have direct competitors for sure.
yeah, because you got competitors coming out of Mexico and everywhere else, South America and all of that. And
yeah,
and Howard, help us understand, because we always hear how much more expensive it is to do business and all that. We understand that.
yeah.
But how do you compete against some of these just huge global organizations that are pumping in the same product that you are? How do you compete in price with that?
Well, that's a great question. We tend to feel like we're in a completely different universe in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We are working with a customer base that really prioritizes values. They are certainly have price in their minds, but they're committed to sourcing locally. They're committed to transparent supply chains. They want to know where the food's from. They want to list the farm name. And we provide all of that transparency. And it's really unusual. Like, I think that whole huge Mexico, California, like all the mainstream supply chain, not only they can barely tell you the country, they can tell you the country.
Right.
And we can tell you like the name of the farmer. And that's really different. And they value, those same businesses that value that we are women owned. They know their driver, they know us,
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. So I'm just trying to understand with Pete's Greens, for instance,
Mhm.
do you go somewhere to a hub and pick up the produce
Yeah.
and load it and then go, or do they bring it to you? And if I'm a driver of either a box truck or a van and I go down to New York City, do I stay there overnight, or do I go from there to somewhere else, or do I come back here?
Yeah. So we mostly are picking up directly from farms.
Okay.
And so most of the farms we work with, like if we place an order with them and we pick it up from the farm in the next day or two.
Okay.
Which is also like, I think, part of our focus is to make it so a farmer doesn't have to leave the farm to sell food.
It's pressure.
Yeah. And as far as our system, our main hub is in Hatfield, Massachusetts, because of the DOT regulations on time. So in order for us to sell, food from Northern Vermont and deliver it in New York City at the hour that it needs to be delivered, we have drivers based in Hardwick, and then we have drivers based in Hatfield, and we have drivers based in Groton.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess the point that I'm trying to get to is really to help this industry. And that's really what I want to do, because everybody wants to assume if you're not listening and you're not paying attention, you're just assuming, oh yeah. Well, the Vermont's just spending all this extra money and doing blah, blah, blah. And that's what they're doing. But you're actually having buyers, consumers come to you because of your product. And so it isn't a captive market that you have. It isn't like, okay, we're going to produce this and the school system has to buy it. I mean, you're out on the open market.
Yeah.
And delivering product that people want to buy. As we know, if anybody's been in business before, you don't have anything until people want it. And that's what you're doing. And I guess that's what I'm trying to get out there for anybody who might be listening, or anybody who might have a question of, well, it's just too damn expensive to do that. Well, maybe quality's better.
Yeah.
But certainly there's a whole market being driven that is people are willing to pay for that. So it's not just a captive market in Vermont. It's a market that's regional and people are willing to pay.
Yeah, and I mean, and I believe, I think in order for a healthy farm here needs to get a decent price for the food they're growing. It's like at the scale we're at, you can't sell at that bottom rung.
Right.
And so we're trying to provide that connection so that the customers who want that product and are willing to pay, are connected with the farmers growing what they want.
Yes.
So are you in a position to increase the farms as well? Like you said, 175.
Yeah,
Can you make it 200?
yeah.
You
We
could.
added more than 30 vendors last year.
Oh,
And that's really why we're not really interested in scaling like in some exponential way in terms of that 5 million turning into 50, but we're sort of trying to provide the service that people need here to keep farming. And if that's adding more vendors, like,
You'll grow as you need to grow then?
yeah,
Or we could get to a point and say, this is,
I don't know. We talk about that all the time. I'm not sure, but I think we are set up
there's the
to
entrepreneur.
keep growing.
buy more trucks and have more drivers, I guess.
Right.
So you started in Vermont,
Mhm.
and then when did you, how many years in when you said, oh gosh, because of DOT, I gotta do something in Massachusetts, I gotta do something in.
Yeah, right around when like employees started quitting because they didn't like spending the night elsewhere. Yeah, it was really, I mean, we've always had a base in Vermont and and most of what we buy is in Vermont, but that base and that's within the first year, like that was sort of beginning to be a place where we aggregated to.
Because you originally started right here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I continue to feel like the service we provide too, like Vermont is the furthest from these places, of all the, New York State is its own story, I guess, but I feel like our Vermont growers feel the most isolated from some of these markets. So,
Well, good. Any more questions for Annie?
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Great presentation. Thank you. Who's next?
I think I am. Okay, great. Sorry, I have notes on my phone, so I'm just gonna
That's
leave it
fine.
out here.
Yeah.
And I made a presentation. Some of you may recognize these faces from last year. Actually came and spoke before some of you twice.
Tell us who you are.
My name is Rose Thackeray, and that's my wife, Emily Bursey. We own a farm in Northfield, Vermont. We started in 2020 and we've grown very quickly. Right now, our main production is about 2,000 meat birds that we process on farm under agricultural exemption. So I originally came before you all last year to testify on behalf of what I thought was H603, but anyway, whatever it ended up being. The poultry parts bill.
Poultry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gobble reported that.
I did.
Yeah, and so, while we came here to testify and we're hoping that that would move through, we were also working on our Working Lands grant application for the Small Farms Diversification and Transition Grant. Next slide, please. This is mostly just to remind us all that summer will come. Anyway, I can't wait for it. I guess just also as a personal note, like coming here to speak about H603 or the poultry parts bill, was, one of my better days. I felt like really good leaving, that I was able to voice, my perspective and the way in which that would have impacted my business and did eventually impact my business.
In what way? How did that bill? Because we passed that bill, but I think we passed it overwhelmingly. I don't think that anybody did that. So tell us what that bill did for you. And also you're gonna get to about what the grant was and what the grant did for you as well. But tell us what that bill did.
Yeah, sure. So it was kind of a chicken of an egg, or what came first, chicken or the egg situation, because while I was testifying on, in the positive for that bill, I also knew that there was going to be like a major lift in equipment in order for us to really be able to hit the ground running by offering poultry parts. And so while we were still going to offer poultry parts to our customers that season, should that bill have passed, we would not have been able to offer them at scale immediately in an efficient way and with a professional look had we not received the grant as well. And so both of those things really worked in tandem and they wouldn't have had the same impact without each other. And so with the bill passing, I feel like maybe March was the timeline, early April, I can't exactly remember, but it was the same month that the bill passed and that we received that grant. So it really also gave us that boost at a time of the year where cash flow is really low. All of our inputs are starting, to begin the season. And, our processing season, we process on farm, begins in June. And so because that timeline was in a timely fashion, we were able to begin right away our first processing date offering poultry parts. So really, these things are really hard to line up timeline wise. I understand that, even just like grants that don't also require a policy to also change to enact. So it's like the fact that it all happened. And because also, this was our first working land grant, we were able to get 90% of our funds up front. So that's another huge reason why we were able to begin immediately with offering poultry parts. And our main mode of sale is at the Capital City Farmers Market, which is the other reason why I came to speak to you all last year. And so, next slide, please. This is specifically what we requested our grant for. We were on obviously the smaller scale of working lands requests. We received just over $9,000 to receive that back.
9,000 or 90?
9,000.
Okay.
So that's our vacuum sealer, and that scale there is the brand is Bizerba. Their main business buying that scale is like Price Choppers. They're like very much so for a deli. So I'm able to, with their software, have all my product listing, which has increased obviously. Before it was just a whole bird, either at the retail price or at the wholesale price. So now I have a product listing of more than 15 offerings, and I'm able to like in real time change those settings, and it gives me the price per pound. All those great things. I'll show you a label in the next slide. So our first season, I told you we produced a little over 2,000 meat birds. Our first season, we were able to part 500, which is about 25% of our total birds raised, and we plan to increase that again this year.
And how did you know that you needed that market?
Needed part sale?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my entire working life has been spent in meat. I worked in a USDA processing facility for 2 years for Babette's Table, makes salami cured meats. And so my goal for the farm that I started was to always offer parts. I just thought I was going to have to be state inspected. And so that was something that we have been working towards. But anytime you're starting a business and growing the raw product, it's like, I first had to invest in those, to go backwards, those first slides I showed you of our field operations were our first, massive infrastructure investments. So like the silos were $10,000. That brooder is where the chicks spend their first week of life. That was $20,000. Our processing equipment that we have yet, etc. It's all been incremental. And so I was always going to continue investing to get to state inspection should that have been required. But the poultry part bill allowed for processors like me processing under exemption to be able to part without having an inspector present.
But knowing the business and all that, you said, there is a need for me to part these out. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously there's more labor.
There is not pastured poultry parts offered in central Vermont. Period. Chittenden County has Maplewind, and they are in, retailers there like City Market, Healthy Living, at their farm store, etc. Central Vermont doesn't really have that. At the co-op, you can get Misty Knoll, sometimes Maplewind. But also the parts that were being offered at the Capital City Farmers Market where I'm at were parts that were processed by Maplewind. So outside of that, like either way, I would, if I were to have brought my product to a processor like Maplewind, I'd be paying them per bird as well. So like, yes, there is added labor for me to part my own. But I also, my whole bird price averages at $5.25 and my parts average price is 10. So that doubles my price per pound.
So somebody came to you and said, "Oh, do you have wings?"
Right.
And then so you kept on repeatedly, but again, knowledge in the business, but repeatedly were being asked as far as, do you do this?
Yeah, that's the reality for consumers. Like with whole birds, like people who want to support me, I am a small business. Like I don't worry about selling out. I sold 2,000 birds whole just fine. And I'm never going to be able to produce enough for the market that I have, which is a good problem to have. But the consumer doesn't always have time or isn't thawing that 5-pound whole bird on time to be able to put dinner out at a reasonable time. And so a lot of people just want a package of breasts for that night. And so, yeah, that was definitely always a goal to reach. And we just got there faster and with less loans, truly, by having that bill pass first. Sorry, I was just bringing myself back to my notes.
Can I just jump in for a sec, Rose?
Please.
And maybe Abby can help too. That's a great question, Mr. Chair, but I remember testimony last year from a farmer that was down south somewhere in Vermont. I don't remember if it was Windham or Windsor County, who literally had to put birds in their transportation vehicle and go to New Hampshire to get a process and then bring them back.
Exactly.
And that was pretty powerful testimony too. I mean,
Yeah.
I spent all day driving.
Absolutely. And
I don't remember who it was.
I think that the demand for local poultry is so great and the supply isn't matching it, that Maplewind is always going to have producers who cannot, for some reason, process and part their own birds. So it would be a guess for me to say, but I would assume that their schedule is also booked for this coming year. So that wasn't even necessarily ever really an option for us because A, they are always booked out and are limited in their offering to other farms. B, like you're saying, I'm an hour and a half from Richmond and, that would require just those birds sitting in those crates for that much longer. And then also I am a control freak. Like you don't start your own business, your own farm for wanting to hand off your final product to somebody else. And so, that matters a lot to me. We only eat the product that we have, set back for some reason. And we just had wings for the Super Bowl and every single wing I had, I was like, why exactly was this set apart from what was for sale? So my standards are just really high. And so, we were able to further process and package about 75 birds a day because of those infrastructure improvements. You can see the vacuum sealer allows us to have a continuous flow with 2 sides. When we're doing parts, you can fit 4 packages on either side. So you're always having 16 packages in flow. And so because of all of this, 2024 was the first year in our business that we sold more chicken retail than we did wholesale.
Nice.
And that is really the direction that we need to go. And obviously, as I'm saying, demand, demand is there. And so I prefer it to be through retail channels than wholesale.
Sure.
And so, between the work that you all did to get that bill passed and the Working Lands grant coming in tandem, we arrived on the scene with poultry parts that were efficiently and effectively produced with a very professional final look. We go to our last slide. So that's the label that is thermal printed through the label maker that we received through the grant. That has all of the necessary information there. And so, yeah, mostly parts have been really well received. We have offered a whole bird CSA for years. This winter, we were able to expand that to be a part CSA too. And of our customers, 40% chose that option right off the bat, first time we offered it. And I anticipate those numbers also flipping this summer when I offer that for the first time. And I guess in like my final thought is like, I'm not here to prophesize, I can't, but at the same time, I do anticipate 2025 being a year that's similar to 2020, and that we will see the holes and the gaps left by the industrial food system, and, you know, small farmers and producers like me are going to continue to work really hard to fill those. And this is just an example of that. So yeah, mostly I'm just here to say thanks.
So, great presentation, yep.
We finished that farmer's market situation, I hope.
Yeah, that is greatly improved
Okay,
too.
good.
We actually have a meeting with BGS coming
Okay,
up this
good.
week. So yeah, yeah.
For those of you that didn't know, the farmer's market here used to be downtown.
Okay.
Outgrew it, went to a parking lot situation on, is that Main or State? I can never remember.
We've been a lot of places in the
Yeah.
Capitol complex.
Yeah,
But right
And-
now we live at 133 State.
okay. And that was a BGS situation where they were kind of not comfortable pushing back. They, with the flood damage, there was some construction concerns too, but.
And it looks like our layout is right back. I think we're gonna lose some chain link fence. Anyway, we're all very hopeful
Good.
about this coming season. Yeah, for all the reasons. I have all the products I could wish to offer and a spot to go and offer them and people who come religiously. So
Good.
Bird flu, really concerning you?
Yeah, and I mean, that's definitely another reason to have in-house processing. Biosecurity is, you know, I think top of mind for all farmers. And it is on my mind, definitely. You know, something that has already happened is that hatcheries are tacking on an additional $15 charge for every case of live animals shipped through the mail. I receive about 8 every time I receive a shipment. So that's about $1,000 additional cost. Just on those chicks arriving to my farm. I was able actually to hop on a truck, coming from Pennsylvania to Irisburg. So I will be driving to pick up my chicks, which I would prefer.
Where are they coming to Irisburg?
They're going to the Justice Homestead. I actually don't know Tyler Justice, but he receives 15,000. So anyway, he was gracious enough to allow actually 3 other farms to join that truck.
Helps in trouble.
So that's kind of like right now I've solved that first issue. I'm, you know, able to get on a truck to pick up chicks, but you know, it still requires chicks coming from Pennsylvania through New York into Vermont and me being able to bring them back and them being healthy. So I don't really have poultry parts if I don't have chicks. So that's my first thing that I'm
What's
definitely paying
the
attention to.
brand of bird that you prefer?
Cornish cross is industry standard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they check them birds as soon as there's
The day they hatch, they come.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with the male. It just takes them 3 days or more.
And your nightmare is this one habit and then the whole.
Yeah, I think the hatcheries are also like incredibly biosecure and have increased that like year after year, and have their own systems in place for that. But also all agriculture crossing state lines, live animals, you know. Anyway, there'll be multiple points for checking and reference, I would assume. So yeah, I feel our farm is resilient and adaptable, And so we will continue to forge.
Sounds like you got a great person.
Well, thank you. It was very
Thank
good.
you.
Great presentation. Really
Great to
enjoyed
be
it.
included. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark is online.
Well, we're going to Mark.
He is first there.
There, can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, we can, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. My name is Mark Goodridge. I'm one of the owners of Goodridge Lumber, which is a small family sawmill located in Albany, Vermont, celebrating our 50th year in business. We're known for specializing in the production of white cedar, building materials, but we also have been experimenting with some other species the last couple of years as well. Our grant was awarded, and basically last year what we did was we extended our local utilities three-phase transmission line 1.3 miles to our facility and tied it into our electrical system, which was being fueled by diesel-powered generators. We have this project we've been discussing the last few years, looking forward, as our generators were beginning to age out, what to do when the time came that, you know, something needed to be upgraded. As far as generating our own power with generators, it was clear that that was not going to be an option, because anything new used to create prime power in Vermont, the engines have to be Tier 4 compliant, and the smallest genset that met those requirements were double the size of what we currently ran. So between the cost of trying to purchase one and operate it, it just was infeasible. So this line extension was, you know, necessary, we felt, for our future operations. So we were awarded the grant. We were glad they were flexible. We were allowed to have 90% of the funding up front, which was very important because our local utility was requiring us to pay them in full before they would begin line construction, and their portion of the project was over $330,000. So that, you know, that was critical to us. The grant itself was crucial. You know, our amount, you know, you were told earlier, our grant was, I believe, $225,000. This project, you know, itself came in at close to $500,000, which a business our size, there's no way, you know, that we could take on that financial obligation alone. So the grant and the Working Lands Board certainly made, you know, that happen for us. The project was started in September. In the end of October, it was completed, and since then we have been operating with our electricity from the local utility. I guess we had several goals going into this project that we wanted to achieve. The first was reducing our carbon footprint, which we're always conscious of by eliminating the diesel generators. We will cut our annual diesel fuel consumption by approximately 13,000 gallons. What else was there? Also, due to climate change, the last couple of years, we've had trouble securing our raw material. As I mentioned earlier, we do specialize in white cedar, which tends to grow in wetter areas. And the bulk of that harvesting to do it sustainably is done in the winter months when it's frozen. And as we all know, the last two winters did not cooperate with that. So we have looked into possibly processing other species as well as the cedar. That way we can fill our annual production needs.
How do you feel, Mark? How do you feel, Mark, that your bottom line's been affected by having electrical generation versus using generators? Do you see a difference?
Yes. We early on, we were projecting an annual gross savings of approximately $33,000. We have been operating, like I said, for 3 months. Granted, in November, we had some shutdown time for maintenance. In December, you have Christmas and the holidays. But the utility bills that we are seeing, I believe that they're right in line with what we projected. So we are hoping for an 8 to 10 year payback for what we contributed. And then, we will realize the cost savings after that. But we structured our part of the money that we needed based on the energy savings would pay the loan payment.
Yeah.
And it's looking like what we projected is going to be right in line with what we're seeing now.
That's nice.
So some of the other things we're hoping to accomplish is obviously being in business for 50 years. We deal with an average of 70 local loggers yearly. That can fluctuate up or down, but we want to provide a local market for the wood, so it can be harvested locally, processed locally, and the majority of our retail is sold locally. So we want to see the loggers have a good local market for their product. So obviously, continuing to do what we do, we feel we can provide that. One of the other things that this project did was help us put the infrastructure in place for other operations in other parts of our yard. As you know, generating your own power, most anything run on electricity has to be in fairly close proximity to the generator itself. And by bringing the three-phase to us on the local utility, the lines run all the way up through our yard. So it is possible to put other value-added operations in other parts of the yard and have power there. One of which we are considering is possibly a dry kiln, especially as we explore processing other species. We could see that is something, if we develop those further, that we may be in need of down the road. So, putting that infrastructure in place, it's allowing us greater flexibility looking down the road on what we can offer.
Did the utility add any monies to this project, or are they just called? I know that was a big, when you guys were doing this, I was involved with it. And I didn't know that maybe that they could have worked a little bit harder for you on a few different areas. So I'd be glad to hear that they did help you some.
They did help us some. I believe their contribution, and I believe that's through a tier 3. I forget the name of it that they called it. I believe they put up $55,000 towards the project, and Efficiency Vermont did 15.
Okay. Good.
So, I did question them a little bit because we are friends with a sawmill in Pittsford, Vermont, Gagnon Lumber, that did this same type of project a number of years ago. Their local utility was Green Mountain Power, and originally it seemed to me they were a little more friendly on what they would offer up to them. But again, we're dealing with two different utilities, and I don't really know how they're all structured. But we did get some help from them. Yes, and the project cost, a problem that we did run into early on was obviously this grant process could take, close to a year from when you initially start. And with you're always trying to get up-to-date estimates. But when when it came time that the grant was completed and we were ready to go, they were suddenly tacking on a little more money that could not be absorbed. But we did negotiate with them. It came to an agreement, and things got started on time. And like I said, it was completed. The end of October, we were officially hooked up and running offline. So we seem to have achieved everything that we wanted. It looks going forward, but like I said, I really, would like to stress that without this grant, there's no way that this project would have taken place.
It's gonna be a little quieter in your yard.
Well, yeah, it is a little quieter. So I guess that's good to know, and certainly that helps in any of your Act 250 any of your Act 250 stipulations. So yes, we're glad to do it. We're glad that everything seems to be coming in where we had projected. And look, now that this is completed, we're looking forward to other projects where we can increase the flexibility of what we do.
Sounds good. Committee, any questions?
I just want, if you could, and you run into Ray Colton in Pittsfield, tell him I said hi if you would.
Yes, we know Ray.
I bet you do.
And do you feel this saved the mill?
Yes, I mean, to be realistic, we felt we had 5, probably with the current generators, maybe 5 years left. And certainly the conversation was going to be had on, do you continue or not?
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie, the Colleen, who you usually hear testify, she's in her 70s. We're looking at business transition. What do you do? All 3 of us boys have worked there. And to be honest, the sawmill climate, the whole wood products climate in Vermont is more in survival mode now than it is thriving. I mean, it's no secret there have been a lot of mills lost, and I think there are a lot of mills kind of at the tipping point of, do we continue or not? So I think this absolutely was crucial in ensuring the future operations of the mill.
Good. Committee, anything else?
Thanks, Mark.
Mark, thank you. Tell your family I said hi. Appreciate it. Glad it went well for you, and I'm glad the grant worked well. I'm very happy to hear that you folks were the recipients of it, and that worked out well for you.
Well, thank you guys all very much.
Yep, thank you.
Can I add one? I wanted to clarify something in the beginning. Do I have time to add one?
Yeah, absolutely,
Okay.
of course.
And I realized, I just wanted to be clear that these are all grantees from fiscal year 2024.
Yep.
And in fiscal year 2025, we do not have supply chain infrastructure investments just due to funding levels.
Yep.
So next year, it'll be a different, set of grantees. And we are still offering our core business enhancement grant, which the cap is 50,000.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure because you'll see that discrepancy, and I wanted to call it out.
Thank you.
Are we, anyone else?
I'll just note that the mill that Mark mentioned in Pittsburgh, Gagnon Lumber, that 3-phase power project also received a working lands
Oh,
grant.
nice. Great. That's nice to hear. Well, good. Well, we love success stories. We're, we can bring those all day long. And so, again, we just get down to, we'd love to be able to do more on our part to make sure that, that we could respond to more of these grants with money. I think that would all make us happy, but it's nice to hear that the ones that received it were thankful, but better yet, not just thankful, but that they thought that it did with what they wanted it to do. It helped their businesses be more successful, and that's the most important thing to us. So thank you. We appreciate you coming in, and I hope we see you again.
Thank you.